Welcome to the Game Before the Money podcast, an oral history of pro and college football. This episode, Chicago Bears quarterback Vince Evans talks about the 1980 Chicago Bears at Detroit Lions Thanksgiving game. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Game Before the Money podcast, an oral history of pro and college football. I'm Jackson Michael, author of the book, The Game Before the Money, and editor of thegamebeforethemoney.com. I'm really excited to have a chance to discuss the 1980 Chicago Bears at Detroit Lions Thanksgiving Day game with Bears quarterback Vince Evans. That game is remembered as providing perhaps the most exciting Thanksgiving Day finish in NFL history. Vince Evans was the starting quarterback for the Bears that day and scored the game-tying touchdown with no time left on the clock. The Bears' Dave Williams then returned the overtime kickoff for a touchdown, and the Bears won 23-17 after trailing 17-3 going into the fourth quarter. Evans will share his memories of that game-tying drive and the Bears' victory on this program. Before we get to that, I'll fill you in on what happened in that game up to that point. 1980 marked the second year in a row that the Chicago Bears played the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving Day. And that was the third time in 4 seasons in which that happened. Indeed, the NFL's Thanksgiving tradition started with the Bears playing at Detroit in 1934. So there was a lot of history between these two teams playing on Thanksgiving Day. The Lions entered Thanksgiving 1980 with a real chance to go to the playoffs. I know, sounds crazy, right? The Lions were 7-5, and get this, they were in first place in the NFC Central. They were a game ahead of Bud Grant's Minnesota Vikings, headed into Week 13 of the 1980 NFL season. The Chicago Bears held a disappointing 4-8 record coming into their Thanksgiving matchup at Detroit after making the playoffs in 1979. The Bears head coach was named Neil Armstrong, not the Neil Armstrong who landed on the moon. But at that point in the season, the moon and the NFL playoffs both seemed about the same distance away from the Chicago Bears. The two teams faced off inside the Pontiac Silverdome in Pontiac, Michigan, as an estimated 6 to 11 inches of snow fell outside. The Lions' starting quarterback was Gary Danielson, a man you've probably heard provide commentary on college football broadcasts. Both teams had star running backs. The Bears' offense featured the incomparable Walter Payton, and the Lions had rookie Billy Sims, the 1978 Heisman Trophy winner from Oklahoma, and the first overall pick of the 1980 NFL Draft. If you haven't watched highlights of Sims recently, I highly recommend finding some online. Billy Sims was one of the league's most exciting players during his short yet sparkling career. Of course, Walter Payton was one of the greatest running backs to ever lace up a pair of cleats. So even though the Bears had a losing record coming into this game, you knew that the chance to see Payton run was always special. The Lions won the toss and elected to receive. They immediately got the ball into the hands of Billy Sims, who ran outside and then cut back inside for 6 yards. He was one of those running backs who could run all over the field to find an opening. The Lions gave the ball to him on the first 3 plays of the game. He picked up a first down, and then Gary Danielson completed a couple of passes that went for 15 yards each. The drive ended with Lions kicker Eddie Murray nailing a 34-yard field goal. Detroit led 3-0. The Lions sacked Bears quarterback Vince Evans twice on Chicago's opening possession and forced a 3-and-out. That set the tone for the first quarter. The Bears never made a first down in the first quarter and didn't even get off a pass. The Lions led 3-0 after 1. Chicago's offense went backwards in their first possession of the second quarter as well, thanks to a couple of penalties that left them with a 4th and 23. The Bears finally got a first down on their next possession, but a sack by Al Bubba Baker pinned the Bears into a 4th and 19. Vince Evans is going to tell us a little bit about what it was like to play against Bubba Baker in just a couple of minutes. Both star running backs tried cutting back and forth across the field, hoping to break free, but neither had at that point. Then, Billy Sims caught a screen pass from Gary Danielson. He sidestepped a defender with a quick jaunt and sprinted, and I mean sprinted, down the sideline for a 47-yard touchdown. Billy Sims was very fast in the open field. Commentator Tom Brookshire said that Sims looked like he was on a motorcycle on the play. He even compared him to Jim Brown, Jim Taylor, and Earl Campbell as a playmaker who could turn a franchise around. Remember, Billy Sims is a rookie at this point, but he electrified the NFL in 1980. And in terms of turning a franchise around, the Lions were 2-14 in 1979. Then they picked Billy Sims with the first pick in the 1980 NFL draft, and they stood knocking on the door of the NFL playoffs in first place of the NFC Central. Sims's touchdown gave the Lions a 10-0 lead. Both teams had chances to score in the last 2 minutes of the first half. Detroit put together a nice drive to the Bears' 24. Eddie Murray attempted a 41-yard field goal, and it was blocked by Alan Page. Maybe a few of you remember that Page played for the Bears after he played for the Vikings for most of his Hall of Fame career. Page was still a pretty good player by the time he landed on the Bears roster in his mid-30s. The blocked kick against the Lions was his second of the season. The Bears followed up that blocked kick with a drive to Detroit's 7-yard line as Vince Evans completed a 29-yard pass with 3 seconds left in the first half. Bob Thomas kicked a field goal, and it was 10-3 Lions at halftime. Detroit held Walter Payton to just 13 yards in the first half. The Lions pieced together a 17-play, 90-yard drive on their first possession of the second half. Gary Danielson scored from 1 yard out. The touchdown capped a drive that erased 11 and a half minutes off of the clock and put the Lions ahead 17-3. The score remained that way as the third quarter ended. At this point in time, the Lions were in first place, playing at home, and they held a 17-3 lead going into the fourth quarter. Their defense had played very well, and they had one of the best running backs in the NFL. Things were looking great in Motown. The Bears, of course, also had one of the best running backs in the NFL, Walter Payton. Payton opened the fourth quarter with a 19-yard run. Vince Evans tossed a 20-yard touchdown pass just a few plays later, and Chicago was back in the game, albeit still behind 17-14. The Bears got the ball back at their own 6-yard line with about 3.5 minutes left. Chicago drove 94 yards in that exact amount of time. Quarterback Vince Evans scored the game-tying touchdown with no time left on the clock. And Vince Evans is going to share now the strategy behind that tremendous drive.
Well, obviously to try to take it one play at a time and go down and hopefully make a score to at least tie the game up. I remember it was a combination of, running Walter, which is always a plus to have had him in the backfield. But it was the combination of the running and throwing the ball that helped to advance us down the field.
Evans completed 4 passes on that drive. He said that those completions came with a cost.
Every time I went back to pass, no sooner than I got the ball out of my hand, Bubba Baker, number 60, I believe, man, he was just ripping me apart. And, back then, there was no personal fouls against the quarterback. It was just open season on quarterbacks, and they could hit you wherever they wanted to, and it was just not an issue. And, man, he was just tagging me.
Despite the punishment, Evans, a former USC standout, was able to direct the drive and make completions under pressure.
I remember hitting James Scott on some passes down the field, maybe some curl routes, and that was, helping us to get close to midfield, and then some really good runs by Walter.
Peyton made an exceptional run to his left for 8 yards to pull the Bears to midfield. Evans followed that up with 2 completions to Scott. Chicago had a first down on the Lions' 14. Detroit's pass rush forced Evans out of the pocket. He scampered to his right for 10 yards before 2 Lion defenders hit him hard at the 4-yard line. Evans was slow to get up after the brutal hit.
My left thigh got hit or something, and I was really hurting, man. I was hurting bad. But, in those kinds of games, where you feel like you got a good shot of winning, you do what you can, you stay in there, you suck it up, and stay in there with your comrades.
The Bears utilized their final timeout. They had a 1st and goal on the 4. On first down, Evans took a shot from defensive lineman Mike McCoy as he threw a pass that went out of the end zone. The Lions deflected a pass at the line of scrimmage on the next play. That made it 3rd and goal from the 4 with 6 seconds left. Vince Evans made a big play.
I looked to the left and then looked back to the right and just decided to take off and scored.
The game clock showed all zeros after Evans scored. His touchdown and the subsequent extra point tied the game at 17 at the end of regulation. The game headed into overtime.
And fortunately, we won the toss, and thank God David Williams took that thing back, for the game-winning touchdown, because, man, I did not want to go back on that field.
Dave Williams' 95-yard kickoff return remains one of the most memorable Thanksgiving plays in NFL history. I remember sitting down at a restaurant with my family just after we arrived there to have Thanksgiving dinner. The restaurant had the game playing on TV, and I watched it happen live. It happened so quickly, and it was just a stunning finish to a game that the Lions looked like they had won in the 3rd quarter. Games are 60 minutes, however, and this game actually turned out to be about 60 and a half minutes. If you watched this game, you likely remember it as well. Bears Hall of Fame defensive lineman Dan Hampton certainly remembers how this game ended. He rushed onto the field to celebrate the game-winning touchdown. He had his helmet on but didn't buckle his chin strap. Walter Payton jumped onto Hampton in the celebration, and in doing so knocked Hampton's face mask into Hampton's nose, and Hampton suffered a broken nose. In newspaper reports, Dave Williams stated that one of the referees made an offhanded comment to him before the overtime kickoff. The official said, "See ya on the other side of this one." Williams added that, like many of the players, perhaps the official didn't want the game to go into overtime either. Williams also said that once he got to the Lions' 15-yard line, he thought to himself, "That's it. This game is over." Thankfully for Vince Evans, the kickoff return touchdown meant that he didn't have to go back out and face that tenacious Lions pass rush featuring Bubba Baker, who had 17 and a half sacks in 1980. Evans said that the Bears and their head coach Neil Armstrong relished in their Thanksgiving Day victory.
And I loved our head coach. Neil Armstrong was one of the prince, not only as a coach, but as a man. And I had such great respect for him. And I was happy for him. I was happy for the team. I was happy that we were able to do it on Thanksgiving. And just a fond memory of something that will stick with all of us for as long as we can remember.
The Bears' win derailed the Lions' playoff hopes. Detroit finished the season at 9-7. That tied them with the Minnesota Vikings for first place in the NFC Central. However, the Vikings won the division title via conference winning percentage. Minnesota finished 8-4 in the conference, which percentage-wise turned out better than Detroit's 9-5 conference record. The Lions missed out on the playoffs entirely. The Bears finished 7-9 and also missed the playoffs. Walter Payton led the NFC in rushing that season. Billy Sims won Rookie of the Year honors and led the NFC in rushing touchdowns, tied with Earl Campbell for the NFL lead in that category. The 1980 Bears-Lions Thanksgiving Day game continues to hold its place as one of the most classic and memorable Thanksgiving Day games in NFL history. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Game Before the Money podcast. And special thanks to Vince Evans for interviewing for this episode. Upcoming podcasts include guest Lionel Taylor of the Denver Broncos and kicker Mark Mosley. We will also hear some great stories from Bill Butler. He played on the Packers during Vince Lombardi's first season as coach, and for the Dallas Cowboys during the Cowboys' inaugural season in the NFL. Please visit thegamebeforethemoney.com for great football history articles. Transcriptions of some podcast episodes are available at thegamebeforethemoney.com and are powered by our transcription partner, Sonix. That's Sonix. Visit sonix.ai to learn more about their transcription services.